Okay, this is really not an amp I was ever expecting to get back. And although this isn't the exact model that I had, yeah, this just came out of the blue this morning, actually. So someone who watches the channel, Rob, had been asking me if I'd sell him a guitar for quite a long time. It was a Dale Wilson Telecaster that I've got, or had, a 63 Heavy Relic in Dakota Red. And for a long time I was umming and ahhing. I liked the guitar, it played beautifully. Ultimately I rarely played it because I think I really prefer 50 style Teles more than 60 style ones. It was just a bit cleaner and more contained than the sort of bigger, brasher Broadcasters and Esquires and maple necked swamp ash Teles that I love. So we've been going back and forth for ages. You know, I was offered a Les Paul to swap it with, a Strat, and then finally Rob pulled out of the bag this amp. Now, I used to have a Joey LAndreth when they first came out. In fact, I remember when T-Rock announced it and I straight away put a deposit down the same day. And I think I've received maybe the first one that came here to the UK. And I really misunderstood the amp. And once it went, after, I don't know, 8 months or something, I thought to myself, did I ever get out of that amp that I could have done, right? Like, or did I just come to the amp with some sort of preconceptions and not really give my creativity over to it as much as I could? Now, I guess it's been a while since then, maybe 7 or 8 months or a bit longer since I swapped that amp in. Funnily enough, I think it was for the red Tele at Peach. And I think, you know, I've moved on a little bit and I try and be more creative in things that I'm doing, or broaden my horizons a bit. You know, I do my Jimi Hendrix type things and I do my Delta Blues type stuff, but I also often sit here playing my baritone or my Jazzmaster or something, and although it still sounds like me, it's just a hair different. And this amp gives me a completely different sort of canvas, a different sound to play with. So what I wanted to do today really was show you a few sounds that I love from it. And right then you heard the Castedosa Concha's baritone, and we've got to turn on the harmonic trem from this amp and hear a little bit more of that. You might know, if you know much about Joey LAndreth, that he often plays in lower and different open tunings. And obviously this is a baritone. It suits this amp absolutely. The amp has got such a massive sort of soundscape to it. But it really keeps the sort of edge, you know, even though you get this slightly brash, brown face type overdrive sound, it doesn't go completely over compressed or clipped or mushy. And sometimes you want those things and sometimes you don't, right? With this one, it's really translating everything you do with the guitar and not compressing too much, right? It relies on you to play with like different dynamics in your fingers. And I remember when I first got the amp and I was a bit confused by it. I actually managed to get hold of Joey on Instagram, and he DM'd me and just said, you've got to just play around with your fingers to get the most out of this amp. Yeah, it's got more of a flavor to it than a lot of the two Rock amps. Like, I love my classic reverb. It's a big blackface Fender type amp. And you know, like the Silver Sterling, big and open and clean. The Bloomfield Drive, a bit neutral in the cleans, very dumbly. So that's got a bit of character in its lead. The traditional clean, again, very clean Fender style. So I guess apart from the Vintage Deluxe, this is the one that has the most sort of different character to it. And now that I'm coming to it with a different mindset, it's quite addicting. I've sat here for a couple of hours since Rob came to do the swap this morning, and I wasn't actually going to make a video about this amp today. I was going to make a video about a Vintage Deluxe reverb I've got sitting down here. But I'll make that later in the week. I just couldn't. I had to sit and play this. So I wanted to get my Jazzmaster out. This is a custom shop Jazzmaster with wide range humbuckers in it. I love this guitar. I don't often play it on the channel, but I think I should play it more. This is set in standard tuning. Let's see what it sounds like. So I think one of the issues I had when I last had this amp was just trying to play it like I play every other amp that I've got. All the other amps I've got are more Fender or Marshall types, whether they're tweed or blackface or, you know, like a Marshall JTM 45 or whatever. And so I can play those, you know, in my Hendrixy sort of styles or whatever it is I'm going to do, and I get out what I expect to get out. This one, I hadn't just allowed the amp to speak for itself, I guess. And Rob offered me like the box, for example, with this. And last time I'd kept the original packaging and everything. This time I turned it down. I said, I'm not going to let go of this amp. I think I sort of had some time to think about this amp after it left and thought, this is a bit of a classic, this amp. I think it's something that will sort of age really well. So what guitar shall I try next? Let's have a look. Actually, before we move on to the next guitar, I thought I'd take you through the rig I'm using today. The first clips you've heard with the baritone and the Jazzmaster are both using a fuzz face pedal. This is from Hello Sailor Effects. It's his Abbey Road Germanium fuzz. It's got the extra dial, which I think is a sort of bias knob. But anyway, he gifted me this pedal, and I've been using it basically as my only fuzz since then, a few months ago. Absolutely loving it. And I'll do a video with a Strat and that pedal soon enough, probably doing some more Hendrix type stuff. On the next guitar, I'm going to start off just straight into the amp. And at some point I'm going to kick in what is currently possibly my favourite overdrive pedal. That's the Designer Drive by Great Eastern Effects, which I'm planning on making a standalone video about because it's slowly taken over my Vemuram, Jam Ray and Shanks as my favourite. So I want to do a sort of comparison with those and see if that's really the case. And you'll hear that come on the Tele, and then the last guitar after that, it's going to be on the whole time as well. And just because I do get asked sometimes, I'm running this through the Rock 2x12 cab that came with my classic reverb. I've got the 3x10 that originally came with the Joey, and I will plug into that in other videos again. But I think I prefer the 2x12. It feels a bit fuller. And I've got 4 mics as usual in the room. There's an SM57 right up to the cab. A ribbon mic, a Sontronics Delta 2 about a foot away, and then further back in the room, an AKG C414. And the Universal Audio Deluxe Sphere, which is an emulating mic, and that's a Royer R121 today. So there's quite a lot going on in that sense in terms of capturing the sound. But I want to say actually today I'm really happy with the sound I've got coming out, through the mics. I think it's one of the closest I've ever got to an actual sound in the room that I'm hearing. So this is what the amp really does sound like. It's massive and it sort of really takes over. But anyway, let's see which guitar I'm playing next. So I thought I wanted to play a Tele through this, partly because I did swap a Tele out to get it, and so it seems right. And secondly, because I've been playing this guitar quite a lot recently. This is a Custom Shop 53 Tele that had a humbucker in the neck. It was a Seymour Duncan. That was fine. It was a little bit heavy and boomy for what I wanted. So my mate Stuart at Sunbear made me this. This is a beautiful staple pickup in a humbucker size. And this is a real staple pickup, which there are a few makers making these now, as opposed to, for a while, what we could get on the market was basically a P90 with those rods instead of poles or screws or whatever. So this is a real staple, and it does something different to a P90. I'm definitely going to do a video comparing what it does do differently. Anyway, the stock Fender pickup in the bridge, I'm actually not sure what it is, but it's pretty cool, sounds pretty hot. And I was surprised actually how much I like this guitar with this amp. Let's hear it. So really it surprises me that I moved on the first Joey amp now that I've had a chance to play it again today, really, because I guess at the time I was really in the mood for a cleaner blues sound, but much more and more over the last 6 months, I've moved over to a more broken up, swampy, mid-heavy sound, and the Joey LAndreth amp does that absolutely beautifully. And with a guitar like this, it's going to push in that direction anyway. And then you turn on the designer drive the way I've set it, and it just emphasizes that. This amp isn't really transparent as such, right? I mean, I could plug into a super reverb, you might call that transparent. I could plug into my dual showman or even a magnetone, you might call those more transparent. But this amp, it's not really like that. It has a character that you just can't get away from. And I wasn't sure about it the first time, but now I really, really enjoy it. So I've made my sort of standalone videos about this amp last time I had it. But for those who are not 100%, sort of in the know about this amp, it has two different types of tremolo, the harmonic and the bias. The harmonic is the sort that was found in some of the bigger brown face amps back in the early 60s. The bias is what you hear in most Fender amps, and they're doing slightly different things. What you've heard earlier in the video, I think on the Castedosa, and if it was on the Jazzmaster, was the harmonic. With the Telecaster, you heard the bias. And then with this last guitar that we're about to plug in, it's going to be back to the harmonic trem. And it's the harmonic trem that absolutely sort of blows me away with this amp. And I really adore it, to be honest with you. Okay, to be honest, for the last guitar in this video, I wanted to go completely away from what I originally thought this sort of amp would be great with. And I was wrong. I've been playing this guitar more and more. This is a Fender Custom Shop Murphy Lab Les Paul Custom, a 57 with the 3 pickups. And I love this guitar a lot, despite it weighing 11 pounds. It's resonant and it's got character and it just sounds great. It's not too uncomfortable to play despite the weight and the Bigsby. And I've got used to even having the pickup in the middle and not hitting it as often as I was at the beginning. But it's one of the last guitars I, for some reason, would have considered plugging into this amp, and yet it may be the best sounding of the lot. I put this clip up that you're going to hear in a minute on Instagram yesterday, and actually very kindly Rock themselves took the clip and put it on their own Instagram page, which was really nice of them. And the sort of overtones and harmonics that come from this guitar, this amp picks up on them absolutely perfectly. Now I am using the designer drive, as I said, which I'll show you my settings. It's been the same settings on both guitars. But this is a sound unlike something I could get from any amp in the room, probably. It's something I will have been trying to get for a long time. It's like drenched in this sort of soft, harmonic, furry loveliness. And I want to finish the video on it. So before we hear that Les Paul Custom, which honestly I think it's worth sticking around for just to get the sound of it, you know, an amp is just a tool really. And obviously if you watch my channel much, you know I've got a lot of amps and I sort of think of each one slightly differently, but this is the most different amp in the room. And I was having a think about this. This is now the next day. And I actually think my first Joey amp and this one are very slightly different. I think this is just a slightly better one. I don't know if that's possible because I'm sure Rock check the parts they're putting in for tolerances pretty closely, but maybe it can happen sometimes. This one just seems to play a bit better. Maybe, again, I don't know if it's a thing, but having been played for an extra 6 or 8 months on top of the one I had, maybe something has burnt in, so to speak. Or just the fact that I really played it mostly through the 3x10 the first time and the 2x12 instantly captures me more. I prefer it. But this amp is not going anywhere. I think it already would rise to the top 3 or 4 amps that I'm going to be playing the most. So it's got something different about it. It's not really based on a blackface sound or a Marshall sound. It's got that unique but more like a brown face sound, which I think is just something we don't find in a lot of amps. It's got that incredible trem. The reverb is not quite the sort of short splashy Fender. And again, I've been into that on previous videos, but I've got the reverb. It's got 2 knobs for reverb, one on the back, one on the front. The one on the back is it's really low down because I wanted that slightly smaller feeling, but you can make this thing like an ambient effect. And the way it interacts with fuzz pedals and other pedals is just phenomenal. It builds up this bloom, and I guess I haven't talked about that much, but when you're playing, you feel really creative because it sort of takes what you do and it sort of expands it as you do it. Which I think Joey has that effect with whatever amp and guitar he's playing, but for the rest of us, or for me anyway, I need a bit of help, and that's what it's doing. So I'm going to play out on this Les Paul. I love this guitar as well. It's when I first got it, I got it the same day as the red Tele. I thought the red Tele would be the one I'd keep, but no, the Les Paul has become my guitar, and it's never in the thought process of being sold ever. So yeah, I'm lucky to have that one. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this little snippet into why I've got this amp back. I think my next video is going to be about the designer drive. I've been meaning to do that for months. Great Eastern Effects sent me that pedal very kindly and just said do what you want with it. If you like it and you want to make a video, go ahead. So I will, but I've been using it for all that time. All right, enjoy the rest of the video and I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.